My name is Alma Jean Whitaker. Folks call me Granny Alma. 79. Born off a two-lane near Kinston, North Carolina. I'm going to set this like fence posts. Straight, tight, in order. 1970. I was 29, 10 years married to Samuel Porter, head bookkeeper at Tidewater Savings. Two kids. Caleb, 8, all maps and mileage. Ruthie, 6, drawing tulips on every grocery list. Our clapboard house sat under pecans. I hemmed for half the church, balanced our bills to the penny, and never asked why Samuel traveled the first Wednesday each month. In our town, you didn't. The hinge turned on a headache. Sunday afternoon, eyes pulsing, I opened Samuel's roll top to steal an aspirin he kept for clients. My elbow clipped his grandfather's hymnal, the display Bible he dusted more than he read. It thumped the rug, cracked open, and a slip fell out. Harold Finch, bank manager, Samuel's favorite golf partner, wrote with a cramped lean I knew from Christmas cards. 5 words in blue ink. If she noses early, stop her. Not explain, not hold off, stop. I slid the paper back to Proverbs, swallowed the pill, wiped the doorknob, cooked meatloaf like nothing was burning, and wrote in my own ledger after dishes. Finch note, early stop, learn schedule, keep quiet. I watched. Samuel's phone calls shortened when I walked in. The second drawer took a new key. The Wednesday garment bag clinked like more than shirts. I found why. A safety deposit key stamped Box 117. Tucked in his shaving kit, plus a receipt from a Richmond jeweler for a diamond ring I'd never wear. Then an address scrawled on a torn envelope. 218 Grove Terrace, Fayetteville. I drove down there for special fabric, parked 2 blocks off, and walked by with a shopper's glance. Brick duplex, tidy stoop, geraniums precisely watered. A woman, mid-20s, posture of a teacher, signed for groceries as L. Monroe. The neighbor volunteered the rest while misting petunias. New school teacher, due this spring. Fiancé visits Thursdays from out of town. Samuel's audit run day scraped my teeth like grit. Levers turn machines. I needed 3. Money of my own, proof on paper, and an authority Samuel couldn't reach. Money first. I'd been salting sewing cash in coffee tins. I took it 2 counties over with Mrs. Eudora Blakely, a widow client who knew managers by first name, and opened an account in my maiden name. Wrote the routing number in the hem of my Sunday dress. Proof next. I bought a Kodak Pocket Instamatic in Raleigh. Fresh film, manila envelopes. Dawn after dawn, once the Ford pulled out, I worked with dish gloves and patience. Clicked copies of duplicate passbooks, ghost accounts tied to dead customers, transfer memos tagged HEF, and a typed itinerary for an armored shipment due the last Thursday of the month. Behind our winter coats, I found a manila envelope. Pan Am vouchers to Mexico City for Simon Parks. And a semi, Lila Moore. Plus 2 soft driver's licenses with bad lamination. I carried the stack to Mr. Patel's office supply store, and over a pound cake and a fib about a family archive, used his backroom Xerox until the platen smelled like ozone. Authority last. The sheriff played gin with Harold. The judge baptized Caleb. I aimed at Raleigh, the State Banking Commission. The regional inspector was a square-jawed fellow named Victor Nguyen. Samuel once called him a clipboard menace at supper, which was all the recommendation I needed. Through the bank's new receptionist, Lorna, I learned Nguyen lodged at the Union Hotel during shipment weeks. I hemmed the hotel owner's skirt, slipped an envelope in her purse lining during "Let me measure that strap," and left a card. For V. Nguyen on check-in. No sender. Urgent. Inside, photos, copies, dates. Box 117 circled twice. 2 nights before the transfer, Lorna leaned over the green bean line at the church supper and breathed, "State men asked for 6 months of ledgers. Harold's gray. Your Sam's chewing ice. Good. Pressure loosens bolts. Shipment morning. I told the kids they were sleeping at Aunt Corinne's, packed birth certificates and vaccinations into a flour tin, tucked cash in 3 hides. Flour bin, sewing box false bottom, freezer under peas, and slid a suitcase under the bed. By noon, 2 sedans with state plates idled by the bank's side door. At 4, sirens braided down Main. I didn't run to the square. I set coffee. I sliced pound cake. I waited. At 8, Corinne banged the screen. "They caught 'em mid-count," she hissed, breathless. "Found box 117 stuffed with skim slips, travel tickets to Mexico, fake names, the whole mess. State boys loaded crates into cars." I gave her shock in my mouth and relief in my bones. When she left, I slept 3 hours like a felled pine. Interviews came before sunrise. I rode the 5 a.m. bus, sat in a carpeted room with Nguyen and a junior, and told it straight. I didn't mention the hotel purse. I didn't dab my eyes. They laid out the charges: embezzlement, conspiracy, forged IDs, and warned me the mortgage meant the bank would take our house inside 30 days. "How do I clear my name where it counts?" I asked. Nguyen slid a card across the table. "Start by not hiding," he said. I pocketed the card like a badge. By week's end, Samuel wore County Orange. The paper called it the Ledger Heist. I told Caleb and Ruthie at the kitchen table. "He made illegal choices," I said. "A judge will decide how long he's gone. We'll be safe." Ruthie asked if he loved us. "Love isn't the measure," I said. "Choices are." We boxed the house, moved into 2 rooms behind my friend Louise's upholstery shop in Raleigh. She and I had scrubbed dorm bathrooms together one summer and both understood fabric grain and men's excuses. I recovered chairs by day, stitched drapes by night, and learned vendor routes, wholesale margins, and which delivery boy padded his hours. The kids started at the public school down the block and brought home spelling lists and cafeteria rumors in the same breath. Samuel pled to 7 years. Harold took 9. Twice a year I drove the kids to visit their father so their answers wouldn't depend on my temper. 1 year later, a knock. A woman stood there with bus-flat hair and a sack holding more air than food. In her arms, a baby boy blinked with that milk-drunk stare. "I'm Lila Monroe," she said. "I don't have anywhere left." I opened the door. "The part where feelings go can wait." "What can you do?" I asked. "Keep books, answer phones, schedule. I can learn the rest." "Good," I said. "Back room's clean. Hours posted on the fridge. Pays on Fridays. We keep receipts. We speak plain." She nodded like she'd been waiting to be told what solid looks like. The baby, Thomas, grabbed Ruthie's crayon and smiled like he'd invented orange. That's where I'll pause the reel. The arrests cut the fuse. The new door opened itself. Next we build, not beg. Part 2. Lila moved into the back room on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, she'd sorted the pin jars, labeled every bolt, and built a card file out of index tabs and a bread tin. I set rules on a pad. Start 8 saugs, lunch 20 minutes, receipts in the cigar box, no credit without a name and a phone number. She nodded, strapped Thomas to her chest, and answered the phone like she'd been born doing it. By Friday, the calendar went from blank squares to pencil lines. We needed legitimacy fast. I filed a trade name. Whitaker and Monroe Upholstery and Drapes. At the county clerk, got a city license, opened a P.O. box so no one could lose our mail, and marched into the credit union with Lila to add her as signer. We ordered rubber stamps. Paid. Due. Final notice. I bought 2 used walking foot machines at a motel liquidation. Cash on the barrel. Belts oiled before sundown. Gossip arrived in a floral dress. A church lady came to check on me and left disappointed that I hadn't fainted. I didn't barter stories. I stapled contracts. We dropped flyers at the hardware and the barber shop, places where decisions actually get made, and delivered 1 sample valance to a real estate office. They called with 5 apartments by nightfall. Samuel wrote from county. Apologies shaped like sermons. A paragraph hinting I should release a certain safe deposit box for the children. I wrote back 3 lines. Box 117 seized. Kids visit in June. Mail through the warden. Copies to Inspector Nguyen. I kept paper between us like glass. Harold's people tried muscle. A nephew in a too-tight jacket showed up while Lila was balancing the till. Mr. Finch is owed a courtesy, he said, rolling a toothpick. You've stirred more than curtains. I'd prepped for that. On the counter lay a manila folder ready-made, a drafted trespass complaint, a list of witnesses, Louise, 2 neighbors, and Nguyen's card clipped on top. Lila picked up the wall phone and started dialing slow. I set a Polaroid on the counter and took his picture without asking. Name for the work order, I said, smile thin. He left with his jaw clenched and his face on my counter forever. The bank posted a repossession notice on our old house. I walked a notary through the rooms, documented every appliance and tool I'd bought with my own money, and removed them before keys changed hands. I collected that year's pecans, sold them by the pound, and banked the cash. Let the bank have walls. I took everything that moved. Lila cleaned the book so tight the numbers squeaked. She color-coded clients, green for fast pay, yellow for remind, red for cash only. We met every Monday. Open orders, supply lead times, who needed a push call. No speeches. A checklist on a clipboard and an egg timer that rang at 15. Work multiplied. A builder brought us a tract of model homes, 2 sofas restuffed, 12 sets of drapes, dust ruffles for 3 bedrooms. We quoted, signed, and set a calendar. I trained 2 seamstresses, Doreen on skirts, Maddie on piping, and laid 10 yards down the table like a highway. Lila created a delivery log and taped it by the door. Address, phone, time window, signature line. We started hitting windows like trains. Nguyen stopped by unannounced, bought a pair of cafe curtains for his sister, and stood in the doorway listening to the machines hum. You run this like a bank, he said. Better, I said. He told me restitution letters were headed to families whose accounts had been skimmed. Fines would fund part of it. I sent him out with pound cake and an invoice. Then came the school board call about Lila. Gossip had reached Fayetteville. A clerk whispered the new teacher had complications and shouldn't be rehired. I drove down with Lila's transcripts, 3 recommendation letters we'd earned from clients who mattered, and a printed ledger showing every hour she worked and every dollar she made. She isn't applying to teach, I told the board chair. She's helping run a lawful business that pays city tax on time. I left copies, CC'd Nguyen, and sent a note to the clerk's boss. The whispers stopped. Paper beats rumor. The kids adjusted in steps. Caleb learned bus routes and how to sharpen chalk for my cut lines. Ruthie bartered sketches for scrap silk and started tracing room layouts on brown paper like a small architect. Thomas learned to nap to the rhythm of needle bars. Samuel angled from prison. A letter to Lila, careful and smooth, offered money, after release, if she'd bring Thomas to see him without me. She brought it to my desk without a blink. We wrote a joint reply. Visits occur with boundaries in public. Scheduled through the warden. Witnessed when possible. Money not requested. Certified mail. Copy to Nguyen. We didn't beg. We published rules. Trouble tried another angle. An anonymous caller booked a big job under a fake name, then canceled after we ordered fabric. Lila had preempted that with deposits, 50% before ordering, initials on the cut ticket, fabric rolls tagged with client code. The trick cost us 10 minutes and no money. We added a sign. Custom cuts require deposit. No exceptions. People respect a counter that looks unyielding. By spring, we needed daylight and a front door that wasn't an alley. We found a narrow storefront off Person Street. Tin ceiling, decent bones, windows like a pair of eyes. I negotiated 3 months' rent abated in exchange for painting the facade and installing our own lighting. Put it in writing and had the landlord initial each clause. Lila scheduled the move. 1 truck for machines, 1 for stock, 1 for finished orders. We laid masonite runners, rolled the tables through like a parade, and were sewing again by dusk. Opening week, we worked the room. A ribbon from the hardware owner, coffee and paper cups, samples on every wall. A banker from a different outfit drifted in to sell us a loan. I smiled and pointed to our cash ledger. We don't borrow to breathe, I said. He bought throw pillows and left his card. Sundays, we did something no one in our town had thought to do. Document hour. We set 2 folding tables, a stapler, carbon paper, and a thermos of tea. Folks brought letters they didn't understand and bills they didn't trust. We read out loud, circled dates, wrote payment plans, and taught the phrase, "Put that on letterhead." It bought us more clients than any ad ever could. It also made sure no one could say we'd turned into what we'd just beaten. One sticky July afternoon, a familiar face paused at the window. Harold Finch himself, out on furlough for a medical appointment, pale as old paper. He stared at our sign like it owed him an apology. I met his eyes through the glass and kept cutting. He moved along. Some reckonings require no words. By year's end, we had a rhythm that held orders in, bolts stacked, trim counted, trucks out, calls returned. Lila ran the front. I ran the floor. The kids grew up on the sound of production. Scissors on ticking, the thud of a hand tacker, the tick of Lila's adding machine. We framed our trade name certificate and hung it where customers could see it. We hung one more thing beside it. A simple sheet that read, policies. Deposits, timelines, changes, guarantees, so no one ever mistook our kindness for permission. That winter brought our first big contract with a hotel on the coast. 30 rooms, matching drapes, headboard pads, patio cushions. We broke it into phases, priced by piece, collected deposits by wing, and scheduled installations around occupancy. We finished 2 days early and under budget. The manager mailed a letter on embossed stationery praising our efficiency and order. Lila pinned it on the corkboard like a trophy. I don't tell this to brag. I'm marking the steps so you can copy them. When trouble knocks, set a folder on the counter. When a man tries to turn the clock back, publish a rule. When a town waits for your collapse, open your doors and make the work visible. We started with a back room and a baby on a sling. We ended that year with a name on the glass and money in the bank. Vengeance wasn't shouting in the square. It was paying the light bill on time and watching the ones who warned, "Stop her," learn they couldn't. Part 3. By spring, the phones wouldn't stop. Orders stacked. Needles ran hot. That's when the next hit came. Not from men with toothpicks, but from letterhead. A courier handed me a thick envelope. Tidewater Savings versus Alma J. Whitaker. Claiming our new shop used proceeds derived from fraud and demanding a freeze on our account. Neat trick, starve us, then say we failed. Lila read to the comma, flipped to the exhibits, and hissed, "They're using your house note and Sam's paycheck stubs like a net." I didn't pace. I pulled the blue binder labeled Proof. Receipt for every machine, deposit slips from my credit union, invoices predating the arrests, list of pecan sales, notarized inventory from the old house. We walked it 2 blocks to a lawyer who didn't golf with bank men. Ms. Dottie Kane, a widow who ran her office with a pot of coffee and a steel ruler. "They're trying prejudgment attachment," Dottie said, tapping the statute. We answer fast. Judge hates sloppy grabs. She filed an emergency response with our binder copied 3 ways. The freeze lifted before close of business. We added a new sign over the counter. All major orders require contracts. If you want to fight, make it on paper. We're better at paper. Drama changed lanes. Fire inspectors appeared after a tip about overloaded circuits. We walked them through. Dedicated lines, fire extinguishers tagged, cords tied off, exits clear. They left nodding. The landlord later admitted Harold's cousin sat on the safety committee. I brought the cousin our past inspection with a tin of lemon squares and said, "Next time, call first. We'll set out chairs and make it a class." Caleb qualified for the regional science fair with a bridge made from popsicle sticks that held a bucket of sand. He asked for scrap muslin to test tension. Ruthie sketched his display header, block letters straight as fence rails. Thomas learned numbers from the price tags and could count to 100 by spools. Summer, the hotel on the coast, called again. 2 banquet halls and a lobby overhaul. We quoted by yard and labor hour, built a Gantt chart on butcher paper, and taped it to the wall where everyone could initial their piece. Lila color-coded shipments with tape flags. Doreen taught the new girl box pleats. Maddie turned out piping like a factory. At install, I brought a kit. Staple guns, extra screws, chalk line, Advil, and a spare iron. We finished before the first wedding party stepped in for photos. Samuel wrote that month with a request. "Consider letting the kids see me without you present." I handed the letter to them. Caleb shrugged. Summer job at the lumber yard trumped prison visitation. Ruthie wanted to go exactly once. We set rules. Public room, fixed time, no stories about Mexico. After she reported, he asked about my drawings. I showed him the hotel lobby sketch. He cried. I gave him a napkin. That was enough. Late July, a break-in. Backdoor Jimmy Marks, petty cash gone, 2 rolls of velvet missing. Whoever did it knew where the good stuff lived. We had installed a simple camera above the clock and a sign that said, "Smile." Lila pulled the tape. The thief wore a cap from a local paint supplier. His tattoo matched Harold's nephew. I didn't waste breath. We delivered a copy to the detective, CC'd the supplier, and posted a polite notice on our door. Closed 2 to 3 p.m. assisting law enforcement. By supper, the supplier had let go the nephew. A week later, a plain envelope arrived with cash and a note. Velvet returned. Check the dumpster behind Bayview Hardware. We retrieved it, logged chain of custody, and moved on. Work kept arriving because we kept telling the truth in ink. A developer wanted model units across 3 complexes. We refused his pay-after-lease plan and wrote our own. Deposit by building, balance on install, lien rights reserved. He blinked, then signed. Men respect a woman who can lean a sofa. We took Sundays for paper hour and doubled attendance. I added a rotary stamp, received, and taught folks to use it on rent receipts. Lila ran a mini course, how to read a bill, top to bottom, and made a handout with arrows. An older couple brought in a balloon note that would have popped their house. Dottie rewrote it into something that wouldn't take their porch. Winds that didn't pay us still paid us. People sent cousins instead of rumors. Autumn Nguyen phoned. Restitution checks landing. Press may call. He suggested a statement. We wrote one line. We're grateful to live in a state where records beat speculation. It ran on page 3 under a photo of me and Lila squinting in sunlight, arms crossed like a hinge. Then a curveball. Fayetteville School Board posted a scandal sheet calling Lila morally unfit. It was anonymous, but typed on school paper. We didn't weep. We drafted a libel notice addressed to the superintendent, attached Lila's employment history, and included a CC list, 3 lawyers, Nguyen, and 2 reporters we'd met doing window quotes at the paper. We delivered it with a signed copy for their file. The sheet disappeared by the next morning. Ruthie won a youth art contest with a textile collage of our shop. Machines like little ships, threads like rivers. Thomas started kindergarten, told his teacher his family owned a store for cloth, and brought a yard of ticking for show and tell. Caleb started driving our delivery van on Saturdays. Clipboards, straps, blanket pads tied neat. Winter whipped in contracts faster than we could invoice. We bought a used panel truck with a lift gate and named it Hummingbird because it never quit moving. I negotiated insurance that covered the truck, the shop, and loss due to interruption, remembering the break-in. We ran a drill. What if the power died? We had battery lights. We sewed until 9 with thermoses and grit. Samuel's parole hearing cropped up. A counselor called to ask about family support. I answered with facts. The children were stable. Visits occurred under rules. We operated a lawful business. No funds available for him on release. No room in our house. Clear lines keep roads safe. Early March, a crate arrived from a fabric mill with a note. You buy steady, you get first pick. Inside, ends of discontinued lines, rich and odd. We turned them into a spring window, sold out in a day. Then wrote the mill a thank you that included our reorder cadence. Relationships run on calendars. Trouble took a last swing. A city councilman proposed a home-based business fee, clearly aimed at us and 2 other women who'd outgrown back rooms. I called 3 hotel managers, a builder, and the hardware owner. They came to the meeting in their best hats and clean shirts. Lila brought charts, taxes paid, jobs created, scholarship we'd funded at the high school for a student going into trades. Caleb, now tall as his uncle, spoke for 90 seconds about work. Motion failed 9-0. We took the councilman 2 cushions and a bill at full price. He paid. By summer, we signed a lease for a second floor above the shop. Design room, drafting table, quiet storage. Ruthie set up a pinboard the size of a door and began laying out rooms with confidence. Thomas learned to sweep without raising dust. Lila finally changed the outside sign from hand-painted to gold leaf. Whitaker and Monroe. Across the glass, hours precise, promises kept. That year ended at a long picnic table behind the shop. Fried chicken, coleslaw, kids running, machines finally silent. I stood up, tapped a spoon to a jelly jar, and didn't make a speech. I raised the jar toward the sign, toward the van, toward the people who'd held a line when others tried to draw circles around us. Then I sat and ate. We didn't win by thunder. We won by forms filled. Locks changed, routes learned, and one shop that ran on time. Men had written, "Stop her." We answered with invoices stamped, "Paid," and a door folks lined up to walk through. Part 4, Storm, Steel, and a Deed. September cut the heat with a knife, and the radio started saying names, Bertha, then Carmen, until the one that mattered spun toward our coast like a mean top. Forecast said landfall by dawn. I rolled out a checklist on the cutting table. Sandbags, plywood, tarps, cash drawer emptied into the safe, machines wrapped, rolls lifted on pallets. Lila called every staffer in order of distance from the shop. Closest stayed to help. Farthest got sent home with a kit and instructions. We parked Hummingbird on the highest block, battery disconnected, title and insurance in a zip bag under the seat. At midnight, the power died. By 2, the street was a river. When morning turned gray, we unlocked to 3 inches of water and 1 broken pane. We swept in lines like a crew on a ship. Doreen boiled coffee on a camp stove. I aimed a box fan at the motor housings. Lila inventoried damages in a notebook that would later sing to the adjuster. By noon, the city begged for cots and privacy curtains for a high school gym shelter. We had bolts of ticking, grommets, leftover conduit. We cut, hemmed, rigged, and hung a 10-bay curtain wall on EMT pipe with zip ties and prayer. The Red Cross lady cried. We asked for a purchase order. She handed a clipboard. We loaded Hummingbird. Storm Week made our reputation. We weren't heroic. We were organized. We delivered curtains, covered cots, stapled plastic over blown-out rectory windows, and billed Net 15. When the adjuster arrived, Lila met him with photos, serial numbers, and a moisture meter reading. Payout hit in 9 days. We replaced the ruined carpet with sealed concrete and an area rug that could be mopped. With roofs blue-tarped across 2 counties, contractors lined up asking for quick and clean. We wrote a storm rate sheet, standard labor, rush multiplier, material pass-through, and stuck to it. If a man tried to shave the deposit, Lila slid the form back and pointed to the line. No materials ordered without cleared funds. They found their checkbooks. Then Samuel's brother phoned. He's out next month, needs a landing. I told him plain. Visits with boundaries, no couch to sleep on, and don't send him by the shop unannounced. He grunted assent. I logged the call and went back to cutting blackout cloth for a motel that lost half its signage and all its drapes. A week later, a tall stranger walked in wearing a county badge and boots still muddy. Facilities, he said. Courthouse needs courtroom drapes by Monday, or we'll hold trials in the hallway. We measured twice, cut once, rented a lift, and had them up Sunday evening. Monday morning, the judge asked who'd worked the miracle. 2 ladies with a clipboard, the bailiff told him. The county paid on time for the first instance in recorded history. Real estate came next. Our landlord wanted to sell before his sons fought over it. I wanted the building more than I wanted sleep. We pulled the books, got pre-approval from a credit union manager who'd brought us her sister-in-law for paneling last year, and set an inspection. The title search coughed smoke. An old bank lien, half satisfied, recorded wrong in 1971. Neat trap. Any careless buyer would inherit a ghost chain. I drove to records with a thermos and stubbornness, found the satisfaction entry misindexed under Whitaker. Pulled the microfiche, paid for certified copies, and marched them to the clerk. She stamped the quiet title packet. Our lawyer filed it. The seller knocked $5,000 off for the trouble. We closed on a Tuesday, signed with pens that didn't skip, and took a photo under the awning. Lila stuck the deed copy in a plastic sleeve on the staff fridge. Owned, not rented. Trouble tried to circle back wearing a tie. A man who introduced himself as risk consultant hinted that certain businesses in sensitive corridors paid an informal fee to ensure smooth inspections. I set a recorder on the counter, slid him a copy of our last 3 past inspections, and said, "Put your suggestion in writing on letterhead." He left. I mailed his card to the DA with a note. FYI, unsolicited offer. Paper beats whispers. Caleb left for NC State on a partial scholarship to study civil. We marked the day with a toolbox and a hug. Ruthie took over our new second-floor drafting room like she'd been born to a T-square. Thomas, now in 3rd grade, announced he wanted our last name because it matched the sign on the door. We didn't make speeches. Lila and I booked a 10-minute slot at the clerk's office, filed a petition, and left with a stamped order. Thomas Monroe Whitaker. We bought ice cream and let him pick the flavor that stained shirts worst. A school board hearing popped up the calendar. Teacher reinstatement petitions after the storm displaced staff. Lila went to watch, not to speak. Someone recognized her, then someone tried to snarl the old rumor. She stood, asked for 2 minutes, and delivered dates, positions held, and a clean personnel file like a ledger read aloud. The chair thanked her and moved on. Facts move rooms faster than tears. By winter, our storm work tapered into insurance replacements. We pivoted to a state bid for hospital disposables, privacy curtains, washable panels, reinforced seams. The bid spec was a maze. We mapped it on the wall with string and sticky notes. Nguyen, now at the treasurer's office, called with a single sentence, "Submit clean, meet the spec, and don't lowball." We priced honest, built a sample that survived a nurse yanking it hard, and delivered it to the loading dock like we'd been doing it for years. The award letter came in March. We didn't cheer. We ordered fabric in bulk, negotiated freight, and trained a team to sew the same seam the same way, every time. Consistency is louder than applause. Samuel appeared once, thinner, hat in hand, asking to see Ruthie, who was sketching a boutique hotel lobby. She set her pencil down, met him at the diner, and returned with a napkin where he'd scrawled, "Proud of you." She taped it inside her portfolio. not for sentiment, for symmetry. Proof that even men who break things sometimes write one true line. A reporter did a Women in Rebuilding piece. We agreed to 1 photo and 5 facts. Number of jobs kept post-storm, dollars paid to local suppliers, contracts delivered on time, taxes remitted, scholarship funded. No sob story, no villains. The article ran with a headline we didn't choose and a picture we didn't hate. Orders bumped for a week, then leveled. Perfect. Spring brought a lawyer letter from Tidewater's successor bank claiming some of our hospital revenue should satisfy historic obligations. I forwarded it to Dottie with 3 enclosures: the quiet title order, our asset schedule when Samuel went away, and the purchase agreement for the building. She sent back a response with citations that read like a hammer. No privity, no pledge, no lien. Silence followed, the best kind. We celebrated 5 years post-storm with a picnic in the alley. Smoked chicken, slaw, a sheet cake with Whitaker and Monroe, piped in steadier script than when we started. I raised a lemonade and said the only sentence that mattered: we keep the lights on and the promises kept. Then I went inside, flipped the switch, and watched the machines hum like a choir that knows its parts. Part 5. Subpoena, ballots, and the wire. Election year turned the town into a bulletin board. Yard signs in wet grass, promises stapled to promises. While the noise rose, a quiet envelope slid under our door. Change order, 14. From County Health, doubling our curtain maintenance with a discretionary handling fee. The math smelled like gasoline. 2 signatures: Procurement Chief Ellis Keener and Commissioner Boyd Layton, the kind of man who shook your hand while counting his rings. I called Lila. We didn't rant. We split tasks. She pulled every clause in the master contract. I phoned Nguyen at the treasurer's office and read the handling fee line. He whistled once. If they ask for cash or off-book favors, don't argue. Invite them to say it louder. Keener arrived with hair slicked like new paint and a smile that belonged to a discount car lot. Paperwork's just a throttle, he chirped. We can fast-track your invoices if you take care of our frictions. He set a brand-new burner phone on my counter like a dog dropping a dead squirrel. Use this for the special bills. Cleaner. I set my old recorder beside it and clicked play, our testing tone. Then stop. We only use 1 number, I said. Email, POs, receipts, daylight. If you want special, write it. He grinned wider, thinking he'd found a dance partner. No worries. Commissioner Layton will swing by at closing to lock it in. He did. Cowboy belt, courthouse swagger. You're community builders, he said, leaning like the furniture owed him. Every builder sponsors something. We've got a ballot fund that appreciates friends. 20 grand keeps your checks moving. You know how slow departments get near holidays. Bring me your wiring instructions, I said, smiling like I'd just been asked to host a bake sale. We'll memorialize the gift. He blinked, surprised I hadn't hissed. People mistake calm for consent. He left a card with a post office box and a scribbled alias. I photocopied both, called Nguyen, and baked a lemon chess pie big enough to feed a team. 2 days later, my lost aunt in Raleigh, really Nguyen's investigator, stopped by for a slice and left a small pouch, a state-issued pinhole camera, and a microphone thin as dental floss. We stitched both into the hem of the sample curtain by the front window. A second kit hid in my lapel. Lila labeled a dummy invoice. Co-14, pilot batch, and typed a neat donation acknowledgement on letterhead with all the wrongness gathered in one place. Meeting day. Leighton brought a deputy as ballast, and Keener brought cologne thick enough to glue gnats to the air. I poured coffee, set the folder on the table, and asked them to walk me through, slowly, like I was their slowest cousin. They did. Dates, amounts, routing, the foundation name that didn't exist, a request for us to round up parts costs to create room. I repeated each number like a cashier. The mic drank every syllable. Leighton tapped the folder. Now, good faith to show you can play. I slid a bank envelope across the table. The bills were marked. The count was wrong on purpose. They didn't notice. They signed the acknowledgement, pocketed the cash, and strolled out the way men do when they think gravity loves them personally. They met gravity in the parking lot. 2 unmarked sedans, 1 DA with a tie like a stop sign, 3 officers who didn't need introductions. They opened Leighton's jacket, pulled the money, bagged the phone, and thanked me for the coffee. Keener tried a line about misunderstandings. The DA said, "The microphone disagrees." By sundown, subpoenas bloomed like mushrooms. Our videos, our emails, their burner logs. A reporter called. I said the only sentence I ever say on hot days: we meet specs, we invoice clean, we don't pay to be paid. Click. The blast wave rolled into other rooms. The hospital CEO called an emergency board session. Contractors who'd been bled for years started remembering favors. A clerk mailed us a photocopy of Leighton's foundation filing, registered after our first contract. Address a UPS box tucked between a nail salon and a locksmith. Sloppy men leave trails like toddlers leave crumbs. While the courthouse untangled itself, a parole note arrived. Samuel's hearing moved up. Population pressure. The kids asked if we'd submit a letter. I wrote 3 paragraphs. Dates, charges, the facts of our move, the visits I arranged, the work our family does. No adjectives. Ruthie added a line. I meet him with boundaries. Caleb declined to write, which was also an answer. The board granted release with conditions that sounded like adult homework: employment, curfews, restitution. He showed up 2 weeks later with the walk of a man who'd learned not to take up space. We met on the bench outside the shop, in sight of people and daylight. You built something, he said, eyes on our sign. We did, I replied. By the book. I want to repay. Repayment is a schedule you'll work out with the state, I said. The children choose their time with you. We won't relitigate the decade. He nodded, like a man holding a hot plate. Subpoena day came for us next. Witnesses, not targets. Lila and I walked into Superior Court in pressed shirts and closed-toe shoes. The defense tried to throw mud. Old rumors. Old sins. Lila stood, gave her employment timeline, school records, the adoption order for Thomas's last name, and sat. No tremor. Keener's lawyer objected to entrapment. The judge lifted an eyebrow at the state's transcript and said, or invitation met by refusal. The jury needed 3 hours. Convictions landed before Thanksgiving. Leighton resigned from his race with a statement about family time. Keener took a deal, and names poured out of him like flour from a torn sack. We didn't throw a party. We opened a box of curtain carriers and finished an install. With the county smelling like bleach, an auction notice hit the classifieds. Our block's old feed warehouse, tin roof, stout bones, a loading dock big enough for dreams. I drove over at lunch and peered through the grime. The floor would need grinding. The office needed light. The dock door screamed when lifted. Beautiful. Auction day. Men in boots and hats stood with hands jammed in pockets to keep them from bidding. I'd pre-filed proof of funds and brought a cap. Lila said made me look like a grandfather who counts nails. Bids crept. I waited, then dropped one that cut the air. Silence. Gavel. Sold. We shook hands with the trustee, signed a wrinkled paper, and took a photo under a crooked eave. We moved production in stages. Machines first, then cutting tables, then the iron lung of a boiler that made steam like a locomotive. Ruthie chalked lines where work would flow, receiving, cut, stitch, finish, pack. Thomas set up a whiteboard with order numbers and due dates. Lila built a dashboard that told me by lunch what would keep me after 5. Before year's end, we signed our names to a thing that matters more than headlines: a county MOU for a civics evening. We hosted monthly in the warehouse break room. Not speeches, stations. One table taught folks to read a contract. One showed how to set up a bank account with your own name first. One had a deputy explaining subpoenas versus scams. We poured coffee and stapled handouts and sent people home knowing which counters protect them. That's the point of all this. Machines, contracts, pie, stings, deeds, not to be admired, to keep rooms bright enough that thieves squint, to make it normal to ask for paper, to give your neighbors a place to anchor when a stranger in a tie says there's a faster way. We locked up on New Year's Eve and listened to the building breathe, tin ticking, steam settling, a sign outside creaking on a small wind. I taped one more scrap inside my ledger. Never pay to be paid. Then I checked the door twice and went home to sleep, like a woman whose receipts balance. Part 6. Hurricane, generators, and the knockoff truck. The weather band said, outer bands by dusk. Around here, that means fill tubs, top tanks, count flashlights. We tarped the dock, zipped machine covers, and printed every open order twice. Lila rang suppliers for last-minute foam and blackout cloth. Ruthie wrapped blades. Thomas fueled the box truck. The county EOC faxed a rush. Convert the high school gym into a shelter. Cots, dividers, heavy curtains to darken one end for medical. Delivery by morning, no excuses. At 4 p.m., a stranger slid into my office with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Name's Dax, he said. Logistics for the state. No badge. He thumbed a clipboard. I can guarantee your PO gets paid in 30 days. 10% expedite fee. Cash or cashier's check only. Also, we'll need a donation of 2 generators from your warehouse for county use. I pointed at the wall, our corkboard with the mom procurement rules. Sheet taped eye level. We invoice through the portal. We donate in daylight or never. Bring paperwork. He pinched his lip, left a burner number, and promised to circle back. Nguyen called 5 minutes after I faxed him the summary. If he returns, stall, he said. Price gouging and disaster fraud go hand in hand. We're listening. Storm hit after dark. Tin roof drummed. We worked by headlamp when the grid hiccuped. Lila on the phone scripting wait times, Ruthie chalking cut lines on plywood when the marker bled, Thomas routing the truck via back roads the river hadn't claimed. We pushed 40 dividers, 70 cot kits, and curtains enough to shade a basketball court. At 2 a.m., our driver radioed from a washed-out turn. Ruthie read him a fresh route off the DOT map like she'd been born with county gravel in her blood. At first light, the dock clanged. 2 men in slickers. State seals peeling on their windbreakers. Dax again, with backup. We'll take those 2 Honda generators now, he said, waving a crumpled memo with no letterhead. I handed him coffee and invited him out of the rain. He stepped under the awning. The recorder, the size of a pack of matches, was already rolling in my pocket, and a nanny cam watched from the clock over the time cards. We'll note the transfer, I said, sliding a form that asked for agency, case number, and receiving officer. He balked. His buddy scratched his neck and muttered that he had a guy who could Venmo by afternoon. Blue lights hit the puddles before I finished the next sentence. Goyen's pair and the AG's price gouging team ghosted in with quiet shoes. They lifted jackets, bagged the fake memo, counted the cash in Dax's pocket, and admired our clock. Nice view, one said. Dax tried a speech about confusion. The mic and the time-stamped form did not confuse. While they cuffed the slickers, Tom jogged from the office with bad news. Our FEMA pallet of medical sheeting had been picked up an hour early by Whitaker Monroe Logistics, a company that doesn't exist except on a magnet slapped on a rental truck. The bill of lading number matched. The signature didn't. Copycats ride chaos like surfers ride wind. Plate? I asked. Tom had it. Ruthie had already called the rail yard. A clerk who owed her for last year's blackout shades said a white box truck rolled through Gate 3 heading for the old cannery road. I called our driver. He swung by the cannery while I rang the deputy stationed at the shelter. We've got a theft on an open PO, I said. Unified Command wants its gauze back. They pinned the truck at the cannery with 2 cruisers and 1 forklift. Inside, our pallet, plus 3 more with other companies' stickers pried halfway off. Driver had invoices for emergency redistribution and a phone full of texts from a coordinator using the same burner prefix as Dax. The DA loves when crooks reuse patterns. We hauled our pallet home. The rest went to evidence. I filed a short affidavit that read like a shopping list. Date, time, plate, PO, recovery. No adjectives. We delivered to the gym by noon. Nurses cheered the blackout. A sleepy toddler grabbed my pant leg and asked if the storm was finished yet. For today, I said. Then came the gougers. The generator dealer 3 blocks over tripled prices overnight, flipped the closed sign for anyone not paying cash. Folks banged on our door, asking to borrow ours. I'm not a saint. I'm practical. We posted a sheet. Borrowers sign here, return by X, or see deputy joiner. No money changes hands. We ran a board with names and due times, a small library for machines that hum. County EMA asked if we'd host a supply staging zone. We taped the floor, marked lanes, and ran it like our shop. Receive, sort, stage, deliver. Lila color-coded tags. Meds, linens, food, fuel. Ruthie built a whiteboard flow that turned the dock into a moving diagram. Tom set up a ham radio on a milk crate because cell towers take storms personally. A week later, the sun burned through and left the smell of creek mud and pine needles. The AG's office called with thanks and chain of custody numbers. Nguyen's folks sent a short note. Case opened. Disaster fraud. Doc sting. Dax folded fast. His text sang. The foundation from the election mess reappeared, now trying its hand at rapid relief consulting. Sloppy men. Same crumbs. That would have been a tidy chapter, but storms blow old papers loose. A certified letter landed on my desk. A lien claim from a third-tier subcontractor attached to our shelter. P.O. Phony, but dangerous if ignored. The claimant listed an LLC registered last Tuesday, address a mailbox store. The amount was surgical, small enough to slide past a busy clerk, big enough to jam our payment. I pulled the lien statutes, highlighted the affidavit requirements, and drove to the Register of Deeds with a notary. We filed a rebuttal faster than a rumor spreads. Clerk stamped it, winked. "Been a season," she said. Samuel called from a halfway house wanting to help with relief. I said yes to one task: stack sandbags at the west entrance of the shelter with a volunteer crew that includes a deacon, a roofer, and a deputy. He did it, head down, and left without asking to see the office. Boundaries hold if you build them like seawalls. Poured concrete, not driftwood. Two good things grew out of that bad week. First, the county signed a standing emergency supply MO with us and 3 other shops. Clear rates, pre-approved specs, a contact tree that doesn't stop at a cousin's cousin. Second, we printed a 2-page handout we now keep stacked by the door. How to spot a fake pickup. Call the yard, verify the order, match the driver's ID to the bill of lading, photograph the plate. Borrow return rules for generators. Names, times, penalties that aren't money. Disaster fraud checklist. No cash, expedites, no burners, no pickups without forms. Call Nguyen's line. File in writing. Price gouging hotline. Typed big enough for tired eyes. We gave copies to churches, barbers, the bait shop, and the shelter. Daylight scales when you put it on paper. By Christmas, the warehouse floor was clean again. Dividers stacked, machines tuned. We hosted Civics Evening No. 6. Under strings of cheap lights. Stations taught folks to read an estimate, to check a contractor's license, to file their own small claims case if a fly-by-night skipped town with a deposit. A grandmother in a windbreaker took 2 extra copies for my street. That's the moment I keep, the pass-along. We locked the dock and walked the block. Tin ticked as it cooled. Somebody's radio played low behind a cracked window. Our sign creaked on a small breeze. I wrote one more line inside my ledger, right under "Never pay to be paid." In storms, write it down louder. Then I slept like a woman whose generators came home on time and whose receipts still balance. Part 7. Quiet title, Loud Daylight. A Tuesday in March started it. Tom dropped a fat certified envelope on my cutting table. Return address. A law firm I didn't know. Inside, a notice of quiet title action. Against our warehouse lot, plaintiff and LLC registered last month out of a mailbox store on Jones. They claimed abandoned interest due to a tax certificate from years back, a clerical hiccup when the county swapped parcel numbers after we bought the bay next door. Not a panic day, a paperwork day. I pulled our closing binder, deed, title policy, tax receipts, the plat with my initials in the margin. Lila flagged the case number on the notice. Ruthie checked the parcel map online and found the switch. The county's GIS had our fence line 1 foot south. Small error, big teeth if left to gnaw. The LLC's lawyer called at noon with silk in his tone. "We're prepared to settle if you concede the back strip," he said. "Just a sliver. We'll fence it. You keep your door." "Our door swings wide," I said. "Bring your filings to open court." He hinted at costs. I faxed Nguyen the packet and walked to the Register of Deeds. The clerk led me to a back counter where an old scanner hummed like a beehive. We pulled the hot chain of title. 60 years of deeds, easements, liens satisfied. I made a timeline. Dates, book, page numbers, taxes paid. Tom drove to the tax office, asked for the parcel audit, and got the sheet where the number swap lived in ink that had bled on a rainy day. We drafted 3 instruments before supper. 1. Affidavit of possession and use. Photos of our dock since 2001. Deliveries, repairs, the mural a summer camp painted across that sliver. 2. Corrective affidavit of legal description. Surveyor's letter aligning the meets and bounds to the fence that stood since Nixon. 3. Request for GIS correction. Because maps should match Earth, not whim. I filed them, then walked 2 blocks to the judge's chambers with a slim motion to intervene and a request for expedited hearing. The assistant liked my tabs. "You brought the book," she said. "We like books." On hearing day, the LLC sent a slick associate with a binder full of aerials and bold font. He talked like we were squatters who'd slipped under the radar. I handed the judge my timeline and a thumb drive with time-stamped footage from our dock cam showing 15 years of trucks crossing the abandoned strip. Lila slid the tax audit across. Ruthie set the rolled plat on council table like a baton. Tom pointed to the fire door that would be blocked by their sliver fence. Judge read, frowned at the mailbox address, and asked one question. "Counsel, who owns your LLC?" The associate hedged, "Out-of-state investment." Judge scheduled discovery with real names and ordered the GIS fixed before lunch. We walked out with a preliminary order protecting the whole parcel and a warning to the plaintiff about sanctions if they'd manufactured a cloud. They had. Nguyen's folks traced the LLC to a familiar nest, the same foundation that tried to buy our city's election, then hawked rapid relief. They'd been shopping tax certificates from flooded neighborhoods, betting worn-out owners wouldn't notice a mailer written in legalese. Our case was their test. Bad test. We didn't crow. We printed a 2-page street guide, "Don't let them steal your lot by mail," and handed it out at barber shops, the bodega, the laundromat. Check your parcel number every January. Keep 3 years of tax receipts in one folder. If you get a quiet title notice, do not ignore. File an appearance. Ask legal aid for a consult. File an affidavit of possession with photos you'd be proud to show a judge. Map errors get fixed by paper. Bring a pen, not a pitchfork. Church hosted us that Sunday. I brought the plat. Ruthie brought a big orange marker. Tom walked folks through the tax site on a projector. Lila ran sign-ups for pro bono clinics. A widow raised her hand. Got the same envelope last week. We took her binder home and built her timeline before dark. While that burned, a box truck rolled up with Whitaker Monroe Home. Stenciled in a font 1 shade off ours, a man hopped out offering discount installs for our customers. He'd copied our pamphlets too and swapped the phone number. We took photos, called the AG's consumer unit, and handed him a cease and desist drafted by our counsel and 3 blunt sentences from me. Our name is our tool. Drop it or meet it in court. He peeled the magnet and drove off. Sloppy men like cousins to storms. Midweek, the LLC's real owners surfaced in discovery. 3 consultants and a developer with a habit of buying liens and resolving them with scare letters. Judge didn't like habits. Sanctions landed. They withdrew their claim on us and 4 other parcels they'd quietly filed on. The newspaper ran a short piece. We submitted a practical sidebar, not quotes. Samuel stopped by that afternoon with 2 cups of gas station coffee. He'd heard about the hearing. "You keep winning by paper," he said, not unkindly. "I keep showing up with the page that matters," I said. He set the coffee down and nodded toward Ruthie's drafting table. "She get that from you?" "She got the wrist from drawing floor plans on grocery lists," I said. He smiled like a man who knows a door he used to own is now a window he can look through but not open. 2 weeks later, the county mailed fresh parcel cards, numbers corrected, map adjusted. I taped ours to the corkboard under the sign that says, "If it's real, it stands on a counter." We added a new line beneath, "If it's yours, anchor it in ink." We closed that chapter with a block cleanup. Kids chalked hopscotch across the sliver, so it had something besides a lawsuit on it. The widow with the envelope brought pound cake to the next clinic. The barber framed his tax receipts like diplomas. The mailbox store owner started checking new LLC filings for weird patterns and tipped us when he saw a cluster. I wrote this in my ledger that night. Storms use wind. Thieves use paper. Answer both with fixtures, bolts, forms, witnesses. When they say quiet, answer with a stack and a number. Then I put the binder away, walked our fence from corner pin to corner pin, and ran my palm along the boards. Solid. Not because a judge liked us, but because we built, filed, paid, and showed up. That's the last lever. Presence. In small towns and big fights, be the person who brings the book. Part 8. Ledger closed, doors open. I don't do farewell speeches. I do lists and locks. Still, endings deserve order. It began with a note in a hymnal. It ends with a key on a ribbon. Last summer, the town tried one more trick on itself. Caregiver deeds slipped under casseroles. A slick outfit out of Wilmington offered free estate help, then parked quitclaims in front of widowers with tired eyes. Names vanished from courthouse screens like clouds after wind. We heard when Mr. Duff's grandson called Tom. Granddad's house shows a new owner. He signed a paper after a blood draw. Same group that backed the LLC in our lot fight, just wearing softer shirts. Not a rage day, a toolkit day. We pulled our folding table to the fellowship hall and stamped the banner. Sign nothing in a kitchen across a roll of butcher paper. Lila printed 20. Power of attorney safety cards. With 3 sentences that fit in a shirt pocket. If I didn't call you, leave. Bring the full form to the counter in daylight. My people will be present. Ruthie drew a 1-page who can touch your deed map with arrows from sight. Owner tries the court, and a skull oversized strangers with clipboards. Tom sat at the courthouse kiosk and flagged every deed filed by Beacon Family Services, LLC. We called legal aid, the Register of Deeds, and the paper's young reporter who loves verbs more than adjectives. By Friday, the judge had a stack from us. Affidavits, not feelings. Beacon folded when asked for their client list under oath. They left town wearing politeness, like a mask someone else owned. That same week, I finished our own housework. Not dusting, succession. I'd promised myself the shop would never depend on my wrists or memory, so I signed what mattered. Operating agreement, with failover rules. If Ruthie is out, Tom runs payables. If Tom trips, Lila's second sets the calendar. No single signature moves more than rent. Buy-sell. Funded by insurance, so no cousin can pry into our register if one of us goes first. Letters of instruction. For the kids. Passwords, vendor list, the name of the UPS man who will knock twice if something's wrong. We made copies. We handed envelopes. We tested the plan with a drill. 1 week where I didn't answer a single call. The place hummed without me. Best sound I know. Samuel's headstone got one more visit. Not for closure. That ledger's balanced. I stood there because the children asked me to meet them, and because endings also mark inches. Caleb set a level on the vase and smirked like the boy who fixed the wobbly porch rail at 12. Ruthie tucked a sketch of a storefront in the flowers. Tom wiped moss off the dates with a shop rag. No ranting, just family, present, no debt to the past, but memory. After, we went back to the warehouse for a small thing that took my breath. The team had rehung our original hand-painted sign, Whitaker and Monroe, above the new glass. The paint's crazed with age. The ampersand looks like it's leaning on something solid. Lila squeezed my shoulder. "It's the only thing we let peel," she said. "Proves we stuck around." Evenings, a granddaughter shadows me. Nora has my mother's eyes and a wallet stuffed with library receipts. She wants rules, not romance. So I handed her my Thursday kit in a shoebox. A stapler that bites, a fresh legal pad, 3 ink stamps. Received. Copy. Void. And a laminated card that fits behind a phone case. 1. If it's true, it can be read out loud under fluorescent lights. 2. Never sign on linoleum. Counters only. 3. People who rush you fear witnesses. 4. Photograph everything before it leaves your hand. 5. Ask for the authority that lives in another town. We tested her instincts. I had Tom phone as a stranger offering a utility discount. She asked for a letter on company letterhead, a callback number, and the rate code from last month's bill. He laughed, hung up, and brought her donuts. She'll do fine. A few last turns, because life favors the prepared. The widow we helped in the quiet title mess put her parcel card in a frame and mailed us a photo. Under it she wrote, "If it's mine, it's anchored." I copied the phrase into my ledger and underlined it twice. The barber keeps 3 years of tax receipts in a cookie tin labeled hair plus land. He lets kids count them for math practice. That's community. Turn paperwork into muscle memory. Nguyen retired and sent a postcard from Oregon. Still carrying a stapler. Good man, that one. He never took a discount. He always took a copy. You want the last page? Fine. Here it is. Neat and clipped. I'm not the woman who found a note and froze. I'm the woman who found a lever and pushed. We built a company out of thread and steadiness. We turned rivals into coworkers, fear into checklists, rooms into counters. When wind came, we added bolts. When paper came, we brought thicker paper. Tonight I took the hymnal from the safe. The note sits under laminate, 5 words that tried to write my ending. I slipped a key through a ribbon. Front door to the shop, back gate to the yard, firebox in the office, and tied it around the hymnal's spine. I'll hand it to Nora on Sunday with one instruction. Keys mean you're responsible for lights, locks, and names. Keep the counters clear and the binders heavy. If anyone tries to write you smaller, make yourself bigger on paper. Closing time isn't a curtain, it's a checklist. Lights off, alarm on, ledger balanced, doors latched. A sign in the window. We're open tomorrow. That's my benediction. Not soft music, bright rooms, not saints, witnesses. Find the lever. Bring the book. Stand at the counter and call things by their right names until the men who love shadows learn daylight or leave. Ledger closed. Doors open.